I'm Becky Johnson with Sweetheart Quilt Design Company. I'm excited to be here with y'all again today. And today we're going to talk about how to work with directional border fabric. So on this quilt, you can see that this border design, you definitely want it right side up. It's got houses and balloons and stuff. So we have it right side up on the side of the quilt, and then we want it right side up on the top and the bottom. Now also you can clearly see that this is more than the width of the fabric here, so we had to put in a couple of seams to make it work. So I've got a seam right here. It's right here. I'm glad you couldn't see it from that close up. That makes me feel really good. And then I've got another one down here. It goes right here. So we're going to learn how to do that today too. And just to show you, I've got another quilt here with directional fabric. It's got these little cats and books, and we don't want them laying on their sides or upside down. So I've got it straight up and down on the sides, and then straight up and down across the top. So again, I had to put a seam in it, and I kind of have to find it with my fingers. Right here, there's a seam in the fabric. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I have this adorable piece of fabric, and as you can see, it's directional, and I have this quilt that I want to put it around the edges. So the first thing you want to do when you buy your fabric, I'm going to cut a 6.5-inch border. So I want to buy enough fabric to be able to cut 2 full width of fabric pieces, because that gives me the most distance as I'm doing that. So for this pattern, I needed 1.5 yards. So I added on 3/8 of a yard, because 6.5, I'm cutting them at 6.5 for a 6-inch border. And 6.5 times 2 is 13 inches, and 3/8 of a yard is 13.5 inches. So that worked out nicely. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let me flip this over. I always work from the top down for some reason or other. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is cut off 2 6.5-inch border strips. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do the wacky cleanup cut, backwards cut that I like to do. Make sure you get your body out of the way and your hands. And then I'm going to lay my ruler on, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my first border, and then I'm going to cut my second border. Now we're going to do some matching later on. So you do want to keep these in order, because once you match up one of them, the next one will be right under it because the designs match. So you want to know which one to work with first. So then we need to cut our side borders. Now we're down to the original 1.5 yards that we needed for the borders. So I'm going to open up my fabrics, and I'm going to put the selvage edges together like this, and then lay it out. And I'm going to go ahead and fold this up. And if you've watched my how to cut your borders video, or even if you haven't. We're not concerned about the cut edges because we'll take care of them when we put the quilt together, put the borders on. But right now we're going to cut two 6.5 inch strips, the length of the fabric for our side borders. So I want to line up down here at the bottom on a line of the ruler, and then check and make sure that I'm even on the top, so I'm not cutting crooked borders. I'm going to go ahead and, glad that slipped after I got done cutting. Okay, there we go. I'm going to remove my selvages, and then I'm going to cut. What did I do here? Oh, let me double check this because it slipped a little bit after I cut it. Yeah, okay. I just had a little bit here. Forgot to count my pieces or I would have gotten that. Okay. All right, so just double check this, make sure I'm even over here. Yeah. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and cut my 6.5 inch border strips for the sides. All right, so then I can set those aside for the sides. So those are ready to go. And now the fun begins. So we're going to take the rest of the fabric that we have and stretch it out like this. Then you want to take your border strips, and you can go ahead and take the selvages off of these, the two ones that we cut. So we'll get rid of the selvage edges. Okay. And then we're going to take this edge, and this was the first one I cut. So we're going to fold under a 1/2 inch. And you can do that. You can press that with your iron. I usually just take my thumbnail and give it a good solid crease. You're going to need a good crease because that's going to be your sewing line later on. So I'm going to take this and see what I can find. Now you can see that rabbit there, but this is just the legs of the bear. So I'm going to have to come down a little bit. That rabbit's going the other way. All right, I'm going to have to come all the way down to here. So you can see that there's the tree right there. And there's the bird. Here's the rabbit, the mushroom. Here's this little leaf. So we just match up. We've got the beak on the bird. And don't worry about matching back here. What you're concerned about is matching right here. So we have the edge of the mushroom like that. So you remember that I said that these two will line up. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one and put that 1/2 inch down like that. And I can actually take this and match it up right beneath that, the first one. We'll make sure we have it straight. So we're just past the little owl's eye, and we've got the curve of the body and the curve around the tree, and our branches connect. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut these. I'd like to put pins in there, but pins and rulers don't get along very well. So I'm going to work with the straight line of the border. It's right here, and I'm going to line up with that, and I've got my long ruler. I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and then I'll have to stretch out and cut this. Okay, and then I'm going to cut a 6.5 inch, and this is just a little tricky to do this, but we're going to cut our border at 6.5 inches. So I'm going to come along here. how to hold this. It's starting to slip, so I stopped cutting. Okay, so we got that cut back to here. Take this little ruler, it's right at 6.5 inches wide. And we can go ahead and cut that without cutting the border all the way back. All right, so then we've got the first one cut, and we're gonna go ahead and put pins in right next to the edge here. So I'll double check, make sure that I have my design matched up. Let's see, I need to pull this over just a little bit to get it back on there. And then get the mushroom lined up. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I got this up just a little bit high. So we're going to get the mushroom lined up and get our leaf lined up and get the bird's beak lined up just like that. All right, and then we can move that, we can pull that away. And then we'll go ahead and cut this other border at 6.5 inches. All right, cut this down a little bit, so I'm going to run out of mat. So I'm very carefully moving this. There we go. That wasn't very carefully, so we'll have to line this back up again. Cover up the owl's eye. There we go. We got it all put together. So now we're going to go ahead and cut a 6.5 inch border here. Okay. And I know I've got plenty of length. If I was working on a bigger quilt, then I'd be very concerned about how many inches and might have to do this more than once. If you remember on that balloon quilt, I had 2 seams going across the top and the bottom. Because sometimes you have to go in a little bit to get the matching design, or down a little bit. So we had to go in about 6 inches and we had to come down about 12 to get our designs to match. Okay. All right, now I need to pin this one. So I'm pinning right close to the edge. And there's a very definite reason for that. Now, let's see. Get this, there we go. Need to come over just a little bit. And you got to be careful with it because it'll tend to wiggle out of place before you get it pinned. But that's part of the fun and challenge of doing this. All right, then what we're going to do is we're going to lay this back so we can see that edge that we folded under. And then we're going to put the pins in. And I'm going to put them in going this way because that's the way I'm going to want to sew with it. So we'll go ahead and put in 4 pins again on this one And we'll lay this one back. And we're going to go ahead and put pins in again. All right, now we can lay this back, oops, and double check it, make sure we're happy with how we're lined up. And then we take these, the original pins out. Then when you lay this back, you see that crease there, and that crease is where we're going to stitch. Now, if you can see that fine with your sewing machine light, go ahead. Otherwise, if you need to put a line there to see it better, go ahead and do that. Just something light, though. Don't go hot pink or something. All right, and then we've got this one set to go. All right, let me get my sewing machine set up, and we'll get these sewn together. Okay, now we're just going to take these and sew them on that line. Get lined up with that line. You have to get your pins out of the way as you go. This one. All righty, now we'll see how I did. We're going to open this up, and yeah, that looks good. So we got that matched up, and yep, that one looks good too. So if you're not happy with it at this point, then you can go ahead and take it apart or adjust it, take a little bit of it apart. But when you're satisfied with them, then you want to take this and trim it down to a 1/4 inch seam. You just put your 1/4 inch line on your ruler on the seam and then just trim it off. And once you practice this a few times, you'll think, this is really fun. I'm going to buy directional fabric a lot instead of being afraid of it. So there we go. I've got the top and bottom, and then I'll just press these flat, and I will just treat them like normal borders when I go to sew them on, and trim them so they're the right size. And there you go. Thanks a bunch. It was fun.